Dim the lights here.
Hey, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's that time again. Sitrep 2020 going on. What's up, Ian?
What's up, man? Episode 30.
Yeah. If you guys are listening, you are part of the resistance.
That's right. That's right. We got a crazy week, and our guest is running a little bit late. Actually, he's in there now.
You are part of the resistance.
Right.
Let go.
Was that you? We got a crazy week, and our guest is
that's probably
that's me.
Through.
Son
that's
of
you.
I tried to pull the Democrat move and tried to blame.
I'm telling you, man, we have to have somebody that we're gonna like.
Hey, you can drink during this show, man. This is not a professional show. This is not. I mean, it is professional, but it's not that professional.
What's going on, Alexander?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Oh, good. It's been a long time.
It has been. Yeah, man. Time flies.
I know.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's happened between now and then.
Ian told me he has
in the chat room already see who it is, and you're already saying who it is. That's pretty cool. I wrote it on Facebook, but not everybody follows on Facebook. We have Alexander Lawrence with us, Watchman Alexander, and he's hanging out with us as the guest this week. So really looking forward to this conversation. We haven't seen you since was it 2017? Was it 18?
18.
Were you there, Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it. And then life got nuts for me after that.
Yeah, I heard you got a little one.
Yeah, just recently. He's about 11 weeks old.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I look more orange than Trump right now. Hold on, I'm gonna try and fix this.
I got a lot of glare on mine end too here. We are so not prepared.
It's all right, man.
You guys have been doing this for did you say 30 episodes now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So still rolling strong.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, we love it. Do the green one. I like the green one.
It's hard to be consistent with it, So I'm glad you guys are doing that.
We have a good core, man. We get probably 500 a week that watch it regular. So
nice.
my channel is shadow banned. It's been shadow banned for 2 years, so it's pretty legit.
Did you monetize?
No, not at all.
And you still got banned.
I got banned quick, dude. I got banned super quick. Like I couldn't find my own videos unless I logged into my YouTube studio.
Well, go hard or go home, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Lord has allowed me to have almost 2,300 followers, and they just happen to be pretty good. So, and this is this show started out, well, it still is, but we originally started Sitrep because we wanted to teach spiritual warfare, offensive spiritual warfare, because we felt like the church was lacking. They were teaching defense, but no offense. And so a Sitrep is a battle intelligence briefing, battlefield intelligence briefing. So we figure, hey, this life's a war, and we want our people to know what's up. So we have some guests on every week if we can, and just to hang out and have conversation with us.
It really is a war. I'm 100% on board with that. I didn't realize that when I was younger, like I do now. Man, that's even worse. I can't get it less orange. Oh, well. Yeah, it's if you don't realize that you're in a battle, you can never get into that offensive position. You can never fight back. All you can do is take hits and occasionally dodge things. And that's not a way to live.
No, it's not. And, that's the thing, man. I'm a church kid, man. I grew up in church. I left the church for a while, but then I got called back. And a lot of times that's how it works. God calls you back to where you started, right? Your ministry is to your people, so to speak. But, man, I felt like, dude, they don't teach you. They just teach you how to kind of deflect a blow or kind of deal with it with a good spirit, right? You're getting your crap beat out of you, and you're like, you know what? Just take it with grace, or and it's like, forget that crap. There's got to be something else.
Well, there's something to that. I mean, we're gonna take hits, so you got to know how to roll with it. But yeah, let's give some hits back. Let's do some preemptive attacks too. Totally.
So, what have you been doing since we last talked? Well, we have never talked to you on this show, but we last saw you. You were at Take on the World 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Was that your second book or just your first book?
That was the first book. But I've been doing podcasting and a YouTube channel and blogging. Actually, I think my website's down right now because somebody just hacked in and attacked it. At least last I checked, it was down. I wrote to my web host and tried to get some help, so maybe they've gotten on that. But yeah, I think somebody took it down. Yeah.
They're after.
Basically, since 2018, I have been just all of my time has been dedicated to trying to make ends meet, trying to support my family. I didn't have a regular job. I didn't have a job in my career field after 2017. So I was doing a little bit of freelance work here and there. But then I had to start doing odd jobs, and I was just doing a number of different odd jobs. And I don't know if anybody's been in that position, but man, that makes it tough. So yeah, I was just swamped, and unfortunately haven't been able to put out any new material other than what I put on my website and the occasional YouTube video. But I'm working on it. I'm getting pretty close to being done with another book.
That's good. That's good. You want to tell everybody what the first book was called and where they can buy it?
It's called Leviathan's Ruse. It's volume 1. That's the subtitle. Volume 1, the comprehensive guide to the battle between good and evil. But volume 2 is still in the works. But volume 1's available on Amazon and also available on one of my websites, leviathansruse.com. You can get the ebook for free or chip in however much you feel it's worth by going to that website. If you like the ebook version, if you want the print version, you'll have to go to Amazon. Or Barnes & Noble also carries it, I think.
Yeah, I got to wear a mask to go in Barnes & Noble, though.
You got to wear a mask to go everywhere, at least where I am these days.
Yeah, I know. We just love mask jokes on this channel.
I had we went out for date night last week to a little place here locally.
Are you sure it was your wife? Because you guys were probably masked up.
Because we were what?
You're sure it was your wife, though, right? You guys were wearing masks, I assume.
Well, I'm a little sleep deprived, so I can't promise you that it was her.
Yeah.
It sounded like her, but
Okay.
Can't prove anything.
As long as you guys have checks and balances in place, right?
Right.
Sure.
I mean, whoever I was with was a cool chick, so I dig it. Anyway, one of the ladies that was working there came up and was, enamored with our baby and wanted to take a closer look, which is fine with me. But she had a mask on, and she got close to the baby, and she was just, oohing and ahhing over him. And I realized the mask she had on was one of those types that has the valve in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, every breath she's breathing is going straight out that valve. There's no filter there. It only filters things when it comes back into the mask. So she's just right there over the baby breathing like, it's a good thing for you. I'm laid back and I don't care about this stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yahoo News just posted an article saying that face gaiters, which is what I wear at work, which is the thing you pull over your head and it wraps all the way around. Those apparently don't work. You have to wear something else. And I'm like, no, we're going to be having goggles and earplugs and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. You're going to be in a spaceman's helmet before long.
So Amazon had these ones. It was like a rubber mask that went over your face like this, but then it had what looked like a giant filter on the front of it. And I saw a guy driving around in his little minivan the other day with one of those on. I was like, what is going on here? I mean, I'm just waiting for when we can start wearing all leather and putting spikes on our car like Mad Max.
Right.
We probably could. I mean, dude, I want to get some old school gas masks, the ones that are scary.
Like
I want one of those
ones hanging down and you're just like, dang. You can't see. They got the fly eyes, like they're like chain metal. You can't see through them.
That'd be legit. Or one of those bird-beaked masks that the doctors used to wear in the medieval ages.
There was a dude at Walmart. So Walmart only has you just have to have a face covering. And this guy was wearing a Hellraiser mask, like from Halloween. And no one even looks at him weird. That's the strangest thing. It's like these people, before, remember like when 9/11 happened and then like some of these bomber events happened and then now you see like a strange guy with a backpack. You're like, something's wrong with that dude. He's up to no good. Look at him. He's got a backpack. What's he doing with that backpack? Well, now it's like people are just wandering around looking like vandals and criminals. Like every person on the street looks like a thug that's ready to steal something from your car. But no one's even looking at them weird. Even the guy with the Hellraiser mask in the grocery store is not even getting stared at weird. I mean, it's weird. This is this is super weird.
What are we living through here?
Oh, dude. Well, we're living through like I don't know, man. It's almost a sideshow, but it's God's plan. I think it's for sure God's reset everything. And like this is the point of renewing the mind that I guess maybe a lot of Christians didn't really understand, because I feel like we have to try to look at the situation. We can make fun of it, right? It's silly. But what is God saying? What is the Holy Spirit saying right now in this situation for the people that are listening? And he's always got something good planned, right? What the enemy planned for evil, he's got something good that he can make out of this, or he's already, and so it's like, I think of it as the point where we're at right now is we're in this Exodus moment, right? Where he's leading us to freedom. And we've just been we're in the process of leaving Egypt and going to the wilderness. In the wilderness, I mean, a place where we have to rely fully on God, because we are in unfamiliar territory and we don't have any skills that we are aware of for the to deal with what we're living in. But we're also complaining because we feel like we just left the comfort zone and we're going to die. I mean, I really think that that's what it looks like to me. If you're looking at it if I'm looking at it through spiritual eyes, that's what I see.
I feel like I'm stuck in Egypt. I think I've taken a lot of the Egypt and the Babylon out of my household, but I feel like I'm still stuck here. I'm looking for that Exodus. I want that to happen at some point. But hey, at least we can individually start to, reel in all of the Babylonian stuff that's gotten into our lives, and we've finally woken up and realized is there. But I really think that this time we're in is what the book of 2nd Baruch calls the beginning of commotions, or the Lord in his Olivet discourse called the beginning of birth pangs.
Yeah.
I think we're just starting that now. And we're about to, it's like on the roller coaster when you go up the hill at the very beginning before you hit the real drop. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where we are. Everybody is being pressed back and anticipating, like, oh, what's coming next? Yeah, it's coming. There's going to be a drop.
Yeah, I think the best roller coasters that I'd ever been on, they get you almost to the top, and then it it stops and kind of jerks back a little bit or whatever. I feel like that's where we're at, where you're just a little bit uncomfortable. You can see kind of over the crest of the hill, but that person down there pushing the buttons is having a little joke on you. They're like stopping it, moving it forward. So yeah, that's, I think, where we're at right now.
Man, it's do you want to tell us a little bit about the book of Baruch? I know you did like a major study on that. It's like your thing.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing that I had done most recently before 2018's Take on the World Conference. But I released a full teaching series, 12 lessons about 2nd Baruch, taking people through, is it reliable or not? What do the scholars have to say about it? Why are they wrong when they try to assign it to the category of pseudepigrapha? And then taking people through the content one step at a time and trying to digest as much of it as we can. Some of it lines up extremely well with what is in Leviathan's Ruse, which, of course, it's all just from the Bible. So I could name a few important chapters like Ezekiel 31, that goes into the thesis of Leviathan's Ruse. And I could go to the 13th chapter of 2nd Baruch and show you where it parallels Ezekiel 31 perfectly. So that kind of stuff is in the teaching series, but then also just looking at all of the stuff that a lot of it's prophecy, but some of it is just about how to live life right. How do we respond to difficult circumstances and all that stuff? And really just linking that with what the canonized books already say and emphasizing that even more. I think a lot of people who went through the course were just pleasantly surprised by how much Baruch really backs up the books that we already have and adds a little bit more detail to them.
That's sweet.
What do you want to know about Second Baruch? Anything in particular?
How you spell it? I'm just kidding. Okay. No, I just, a lot of people, we find out that, we actually had the opportunity to meet with a lot of people that watch our show. Well, several people that watch our show. And a lot of the things that we talk about on here, we bring up extra biblical texts and things like that. And they were the how do we know if we can trust them, and why were they taken out? That whole story. It's, we just have to keep saying it over and over. So a lot of people probably aren't familiar with First and Second Baruch. So that's I just wanted to.
Yeah, I talk about Fourth Ezra.
Yeah,
I talk about Fourth Ezra a lot because there's several prophecies in there, and then even just him lamenting and having an angel from God coming and speaking to him. Some of the things that are said in there, like if anybody has read it, they usually blow over it, but there's some really important stuff in there. And trying to explain it to people, and they're like, "Well, is that in the Bible?" We're like, "Well, it used to be,"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Why is it not in there now?" Well, there's some stuff in there, and I personally, my thing has been, I think a lot of the stuff that we have that has been removed, like Enoch and things like that. What I've noticed is Jubilees, Joshua, Baruch, Ezra, like all of these have some kind of like information that kind of depicts the adversary. And it kind of exposes, like his personality, what he does and things like that. And I think that's why they were removed. It kind of gave us, instead of having an idea of who the enemy was, now it's kind of shadowed and shaded. And we're just we broad stroke the adversary as Satan and little demons, with pitchforks and horns. And I think we get a better understanding of the adversary from a lot of these extra biblical texts.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's a lot of reasons why these things got taken out of circulation, but I think there are definitely things in each book that disturbed people or that rubbed them the wrong way because of their personal doctrines, the doctrines that evolved from bad places, especially in the early church. And so these books then fell out of popularity for that reason. I'm not sure it's only one thing. I think it's probably a number of different things people didn't like.
Yeah. Well, the early canonization, they almost didn't put Revelation in.
Right.
So,
James and Hebrews.
Yeah.
And, yeah. There's
imagine what our biblical theology and end times theology would look like without Revelation. It would look completely different. And that's why I think, even though they're not canonized, you have to kind of not throw the baby out with the bathwater and be discerning when it comes to those, studying those books, because there are some inconsistencies on some of the books, not all of them. I think First Enoch coincides hand in hand with biblical scripture. I think Jubilees and Joshua's, they have a couple of inconsistencies, but it could just be translational error. It could be the copy that we have from the Dead Sea Scrolls. I think there's one book of Enoch that's actually a full Hebrew book of Enoch, and there's a private owner that owns them from the Middle East, and we don't know who it is, but he ended up buying the only copy of the Hebrew version of First Enoch or something like that, and we don't have access to it. So
is somebody really honestly holding on to a Hebrew version of that?
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Wow.
Yeah, it's some Saudi prince in Saudi Arabia, I think is where it was at.
Wow, that's very aggravating.
I know.
we really need that.
Well, it's just like I'd love to see, and I hope that someday it gets discovered somewhere miraculously. But a Hebrew version of John's Revelation would explain a lot of things if we could actually understand the Hebrew, how it was written in context, because we have an understanding that it was written, the version we have was written in Greek. Because when it talks about Apollyon or the destroyer, it says, and his name is in the Greek. So they're implying that this was written in another text and that his name was Apollyon in the Greek. So we have it in the Greek already. So it's kind of redundant to say, his name is Apollyon in the Greek, that we wrote this in the Greek. So there is another version of it out there somewhere. Hopefully we can find it and get some better understanding of Revelation through that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a copy of the Aramaic, but it's still a step removed. It's still a translation.
Right.
So it'd be better to have the Hebrew. Although I did just get a copy of English translation of Hebrew Mark, which is awesome. I had no idea until a couple weeks ago that Mark had been released, the Hebrew version of Mark.
Wow.
So that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, that you can find out from the Hebrew, and then I would just love to see some of that stuff. Part of my study that I'm doing for Take on the World, this year's thing got me into Genesis, looking back at Genesis in the Hebrew, and one of the things I found out is just going to blow people's minds. So I don't want to spill the beans on it yet, but It's really interesting when you go to look at the Hebrew and do word searches. Sometimes it's literally just going through and reading it in the English and in how the Hebrew was, and understanding the Hebrew characteristics and stuff. And it's crazy, but
yeah. And I need to learn biblical Hebrew one of these days, Lord willing, because I keep having to try and track down Hebrew scholars because I'll run into these things, and it's hard to find the time to try and communicate with experts. They don't have the time. I don't have the time. But occasionally I'll have a question where it's like, I got to get somebody who really knows his stuff, because it could change the meaning a little bit. If you, depending on how you interpret little things like that. On my podcast, which I just started back up after a hiatus of like almost a year, I'm going through Genesis right now, through a series that I call Laying the Foundations, because I figure most of what you need to know about how to interpret the rest of the Bible, including prophecy, is in Genesis. It's all put forth there, and by the law of first mention, we go back there to understand those things when we see them in the future, particularly certain terms and imagery. So yeah, that's a great thing to do, is just dig into Genesis and the Hebrew and figure out what it's saying exactly.
Yeah. There's a lot of misinterpretation that's happened through, modern Christendom, through English culture, all of this stuff. A lot of stuff you have to go back to the original Hebrew, their traditions, things like that, to kind of understand what the heck they were talking about. Even Jesus, I think there's so many people that misinterpret what Jesus was saying because they're looking at it in a Western ideology, and not understanding he was speaking as somebody just asked a question earlier today in one of the groups I'm involved in. He was trying to figure out what he was meaning when he was talking about the feasts and stuff like that. And he says, well, my time for the feast hasn't come yet, or whatever. And he's talking about, the wedding feast that he was preparing for, when he returns. But this guy couldn't wrap his head around, because he was trying to study the feasts, the feast days, and he sees Jesus saying, I'm not going to this feast, I'm preparing for the feast that's to come, or whatever, and he just couldn't wrap his head around it. So but it's awesome. That's what I love about scriptures, is the fact that it's shallow enough that a child can understand the biblical stories, but deep enough you could spend your entire life studying, and every time you read, you're going to find out some more information, and more knowledge is granted to you, and more understanding. So that's why it's the living word,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going back to the whole thing about the extra biblical books, the benefit that we have of the canon, and now there are different canons in different parts of the world, okay, but a lot of the books are the same. And the benefit that we have there is that many people over many years have all decided together that, yes, these books have the hallmarks of being spirit breathed. These books speak to us all in that way. They all work together. They all fit together very well. We can put our stamp of approval on these and say, yeah, these definitely were from the prophets of God. With the extra biblical books, we don't have that. There's a lot of them. There's dozens and dozens of them. So it's great that we now have access to these things, but we also have the responsibility to very carefully study them and test them, and make sure that we're not just believing something just because it popped up and we didn't know about it before and it's kind of cool and different. So we just got to be careful, because I teach on Second Baruch because I've tested it, I've studied it, I've come to the firm conviction that it's a inspired book. Fourth Ezra goes hand in hand with it, same thing. I'm 99.9% sure First Enoch, at least the first part of First Enoch, is in that same category. But there are others that I would tell people, be really careful, steer clear of them, because you can get all kinds of crazy doctrine out of some of these things, especially if some of the extra biblical books that have had Gnostic influence are straight up Gnostic or Kabbalistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, that was my rant. I'm off my soapbox now.
No, you're good, man. That's, we teach on that stuff here too. We talk a lot about the mystic traditions and all that stuff, exposing it, how to deal with it and all that.
Good.
It's a big deal, man. I mean, there's a lot of people. Let's see. I heard your presentation last week, one you put up about the unexpected coincidence, I think is what you called it, or the unexpected connections or something like that between COVID-19 and the first horseman of the apocalypse. Is that what you called it? Yep. Something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, it was intriguing. So that's why I invited you on here. And actually, can you lay it out for us? And we'll kind of like jump in and kind of ask questions and stuff. It won't be like you're doing it all by yourself.
Sure. Yep. Thanks for inviting me on, first of all. Appreciate the opportunity. And if you think that all this is crazy, you can tell me that. It's okay. I'm not going to get offended. I actually
liked it a lot. I was, it's very good, very well done. We're conspiracy theorists, man. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
I got that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. So
some of the conspiracy theorists are the most sane people these days.
You ain't kidding.
Yeah, that's the truth. I don't know how many people used to make fun of me for, and joke about my conspiracy theories. And now they're walking around with, like, oh, put on your tinfoil hat. Now they're walking around with goggles and face masks. Like, who's the one that's the weirdo now?
It's unbelievable how many connections there are. Like, are you going to be doing something for Take on the World this year? The virtual conference?
No, I'm not.
Not enough free time.
I had too much on my plate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I put together several things, but I'm doing another one of the episodes for the Reality Distortion Effect series. So this will be episode 14, and it's going to be crazy, people. I'll tell you that it's got a lot of witness testimony, and it's going to connect a lot of the whole, well, I'll just say deep state, because that's what everybody knows it as. But with the Epstein sex trafficking thing, that's like the tip of the iceberg that everyone loves to talk about, but they don't want to talk about the other stuff. The other stuff is far more disturbing. The stuff that is not making the news, all the connections. I mean, even we'll get into some World Health Organization's connections tonight, but guys, this is like, let's just say, what if there was a network of deep state actors that go back to the beginning of time that gamble on crime? They create crime and then gamble on it, right? Let's just say death pools, stuff like that. Let's just say that if someone was to present this to you, would you believe it or not? That's what I'm going to show you in this episode, that it's crazy. And, as a conspiracy theorist, we're pretty much, the movies are like 99% truth. And the actual media news is like 1% truth. And that's just how it is. That's just like I'm pretty sure that's probably not statistically correct, but probability. That's how I roll. But yeah, it's
well, now I'm going to have to watch both of your presentations. You've teased me.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Like I don't know if you knew that or not. I made like a series, like a Netflix series. There's 13 episodes right now. They're about an hour, and they're anywhere from like an hour and 10 to an hour and 25 minutes long. But there's 13 episodes now, and it starts in 1947, and it pretty much goes through all of these conspiracies and connects the dots. Like, you've heard of the Q map. Well, this lays it out through people's testimonies, how it all connects. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Is that a good way to describe it, Aaron?
It's conspiracy theory crap.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Your
it.
tinfoil hat is gonna need a tinfoil hat.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's a good kind of step by step kind of walkthrough. It's how many hours were each one of those? Were they like an hour a piece or 2
They're
hours?
like an hour and 15 a piece. There's
Yeah.
probably there's quite a bit. I mean, there's some part of there's parts of Chris Pinto's films in there that connect some things. You're familiar with Chris Pinto as a researcher? No? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So there's things that a lot of us already know, but I'm taking you through the process of, if you watch the show, it's meant to be watched like binge it like some other Netflix channel. But once again, my channel's shadow banned, so everybody that's subscribed loves it, but no one else can find it.
It has nothing to do with the fact that your name on YouTube is the Holy Hand Grenade. When I Google it, it comes up with everything from about the Holy Hand Grenade on Monty Python Search for the Holy Grail. That's
I'm the only channel. So if you search channels, I'm the only channel.
Yeah.
But no, you can literally search. So Quantum Illusion, the movie I made for 2017, Take on the World, that's the movie that did it, probably, because that's when it all happened. But that one, and it got banned, and they didn't even tell me it was banned because it was still on my channel. It was banned worldwide for like 9 months, and I didn't even know. So when I found out, I had to go and contest it, and it was Discovery Channel, or A&E and Discovery Channel. I guess they're the same thing, but they banned it for 15 seconds that I used of a clip from one of their shows. So, and they didn't say anything. They can either, if I monetize, they take monetization. If I don't, then they can ban it. But they banned it worldwide for that. So, but after that, now you could literally search Quantum Illusion and not find it at all. I went through the whole thing, couldn't find it anywhere. But if you go to my page, it's right there.
So that's why you should just monetize your stuff and then let them.
Well, I'm not going to monetize it, man. I'll have so many copyright strikes in like a day.
If they're making money off of it,
they changed the rules, man. So you get one strike now. You can't live or upload or live for like a week or two for one strike, and it doesn't even have to be proven. Like someone could just strike me right now, and it would shut me down for 2 weeks. Maybe longer, because when you try to do anything now, it says times might be delayed because of COVID-19. Like, you know what I mean? It's bullcrap, dude. This is bullcrap. So I was thinking about starting a bunch of channels and just start putting my videos back out, just reposting them on all these different channels just to see if it makes a difference. I don't know. At this point, everybody tries to get you to go to some other kind of like BitChute or some other kind of page, and there's nobody on those, so what good does it do?
I tried to go over to BitChute to just watch some videos, man, and it is extremely complicated, and the search functionality is garbage. Yeah. Like I was literally typing in the name of what the video was I was trying to search for on BitChute, and it was like, can't find this, or it would give me 200 other things that weren't even close. Yeah. It took forever. Hey, Alexander, did we tell you about the little comment section on the right-hand side? If you click from private chat to comment, you got some people in there that were saying they were glad to see you back and stuff like that. So I didn't know if you could see because I think when it starts off, it starts you in the private chat. So
yeah, you're right. Well, hello, everybody. There's too many comments for me to read all these right now, but I'll try and keep an eye on it. Yeah, somehow I've flown under the shadow ban radar so far. The ban Nazis haven't gotten me. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm just not putting out enough content. But I've definitely got some stuff there that probably could get me banned. I didn't monetize on purpose. One thing is I didn't want them to be able to control my voice, and another thing is I just felt like this was a ministry thing. I didn't want people thinking I was doing this for the money. So I don't know if not monetizing my channel has helped, but that's just how it's been for me.
That was the one thing that kind of concerned me with the new update to their rules that they did at I think at the very end of last year. They're basically saying that they were taking control. If you weren't basically a benefit to YouTube, like you weren't able to generate any income, they could shut your channel down just for that. So that was kind of what I was I was looking, I don't have enough people following my channel for me to even try to monetize anything. So I think you have to have like 1,000 people. I'm like 123 people or something. But
yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, to save the channel, if I had to, I guess eventually I would go ahead and join their, I forget what they call it, YouTube. I forget the name now, but a partner, I think. Partner.
Yeah.
But it just feels slimy, It just feels slimy. I don't want to do it. I have complete respect for people who monetize their channels and are able to do a lot of work, put out a lot of videos because they do that, and I get that. But for me personally, like, I don't want them making money off of me. I don't want it to look like I'm trying to make money. This is about the Lord's work. So that's where I'm standing on it.
I think the worst thing is you can't control the content that's being interjected into it, because I've watched a couple of like people that have commercials on their stuff, and then there's, I think it's from the History Channel or something. It has this guy start questioning. He's like, he just comes in the commercial and starts questioning, like, yeah, so how come the Bible says that there's a serpent that doesn't have feet, and Eve can't do this and this and that? And it's like for a series that it's questioning the Bible, and it's right interjected into the middle of a show that's talking about biblical topics. It's like, you can't control that. You have no idea what commercials they're putting into your show.
Yeah, that's true too. That's a big consideration.
Personally, I hate it because I don't like it interrupting the show I'm watching 50 times.
Yeah.
Randomly, just I don't like it. It bothers me. So
yeah, there's a lot of commercials on YouTube these days.
There's a lot of commercials everywhere.
Yeah. They did that with Spotify too. When I first started Spotify, it was rare that they had anything, but now it's constant.
Do you ever notice that it's like the same three? When it depends on what you're listening to, but they have like the same three over and over and over. Like,
well, they're just trying to wear you down so you'll buy it.
Well, it'd be like one thing if they told you that, like, hey, once you click or once you buy something from us, the ads will change on your favorite shows. Oh, thank God. It's like, buy the ShamWow and everything will go back to normal.
I think it's weird. I haven't checked it here recently because I've been kind of trying to avoid social media like the plague. But during the beginning of COVID-19, when everybody was locked in their homes and stuff, when you scrolled through your Facebook feed on the mobile, every fifth thing that you scrolled through was an ad. It didn't always look like an ad, but it would say sponsored this. And I think it's still the same way. But as you were scrolling through the feed, every fifth thing you look at was an ad. I'm like, it's awful. So
my fat fingers are constantly touching stuff, and it's taking me to Google. Oh, crap.
Yeah. The worst is when you click on one and then you start getting consistent ads for whatever it was that you clicked on, or you put in your pocket, and it started clicking on stuff. Oh, it's awful.
This is turning into a rant.
That's what we do on this show sometimes.
Speaking of reining it in, how about that First Horseman?
Good transition. Yeah, so he has taken the reins, I think. This is a theory. Let me just preface all of this. But I don't know any of this for certain. This is just stuff that's popped up as I was praying and researching. I used to believe that the First Horseman, which is definitely the most enigmatic of the four, was representative of false religion, especially false forms of Christianity. But now I think I've shifted over to another stance. What I can say for sure, and I've been tooting this horn for a long time, is that the First Horseman's not the Antichrist. I know that's the most popular theory out there, but it doesn't make any sense that would be a human on the first horse when the other three are very clearly spirit creatures. So, and everything that's taking place in heaven. John is even there in a vision. He's not there physically. So I think everybody in this scene, Revelation 6:1 all the way to the end of the chapter, everybody there is in heaven, their spirit being. Well, let me take that back, because later one of the seals is about the resurrection. You get the resurrection saints in there. So at that point, they would have resurrection bodies, I think. I don't take Revelation chronologically, so that's
Neither
my
do we.
opinion of that. But anyway, those 4 horsemen, clearly spirits. The 4th one is called Thanatos, and behind him is Hades or Sheol. Those are spirit beings. Those aren't people. Famine on the 3rd horse, definitely also a spiritual concept, not a person, not a ruler or king, something like that. The 2nd one is war. That would be Ares or Mars, depending on if you're talking Greek or Roman. But he's red, which is the color of that god, and he has the huge sword, and he takes peace from the earth. Well, you maybe could make a case that could be a person who somehow is able to single-handedly take peace from the earth, but probably not. We're probably talking about a spirit that's driving that effect across the whole globe. So it's pretty clear to me the first one is not going to be a human, and the other 3 spirit creatures. Do you guys jive with that?
We jive.
Okay. Yeah, and you also see similar thing with the horses in the book of Zechariah. They're a little bit different. They have chariots, but the Lord sends forth these 4 horses to the 4 winds in Zechariah, and clearly those are spirits in that scene and that vision. So that gives me a little bit more strength to the argument as well, because we've seen something like this previously in Scripture, and it was spirits.
Interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard this theory, but I did a presentation on 2018 on the X, steganography of the X, and throughout like mythology and all the way into the aerospace and like NASA and all these different things. They use the X a lot in technology fields, and a lot of people thought it was for like experimental. Like they just think that, but it's like the X Files, but the X in a lot of the ancient mythology stuff, they talk about the X is a symbol, or in occult mythology, they talk about it being the symbol of the four horsemen, or the 4 angels on the corners, right? The 4 elements. I associated it with the crossroads. You've heard of that term, the crossroads, where everyone meets and does a deal at the crossroads. But it's pretty interesting, interesting stuff. But when you mentioned that, when you were doing your presentation and you started talking about the 4 horsemen and the 4 corners and all that stuff, I just thought, man, that's interesting.
Well, this kind of ties back to some stuff that I've talked about with a lot of people about a third of heaven falling with Satan and God giving gifts unrepentantly. When he gave, and I think we see this all throughout the Old Testament and stuff, when he gave powers and control, like say to the Watchers and things like that, those beings, even though they fell, were still had responsibilities and gifts that God had given them. I was going to ask Alexander if this was tied to Revelation 7 with the 4 corner angels. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So there are 4 angels at Revelation 7:1, and it says, "After I saw this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on the land or the sea or any tree." And then it goes on to Revelation 7:2. It says, "Then I saw another angel." So there's this distinction between this angel and the 4 that are there. It says, "I saw another angel coming up from the east, having the seal of the living God. They came out in a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea." So I'm wondering if we're talking, like if these angels are the same angels that were talked about in Revelation 7 here.
Are you saying the 4 horsemen might be the same spirits as the ones in chapter 7?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because, I mean, it says that they had been given power to harm the land and the sea. So,
right.
That's what I was wondering.
I've always thought of that as connected to the trumpet judgments and not the seal judgments that preceded them. Because you'll see that the land itself gets burned, and the sea, a third of the things in the sea die. The sea itself becomes probably going to be tsunamis. It doesn't say that, but there's probably a huge tsunami from this asteroid that strikes, which is one of the trumpet judgments. So I think it's talking about that, which would make me believe that it's a different set of angels, but I couldn't say for certain.
Well, 7:3 goes on. It says, "Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put the seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God." So, that's kind of what I was.
Yeah, but we see a lot of the four corners and the four winds types of references throughout scriptures, and extra biblical scriptures included. I don't know that it's always the same four spirits. It seems like it's actually the concept or the place of the four corners that has the significance, and maybe it's different spirits operating there depending on what's happening. There's a lot of spirits. I wouldn't.
Yeah, the way that I look at it though is that there were a lot of these beings that were given certain control. Like, say for instance, we have the Prince of Persia, right? I'm sure you're familiar with that story where I think it was it Daniel or David? Sorry, was praying, and then there was an angel that was delayed in the process because it ran across the Prince of Persia.
Daniel, sure.
We know as Michael was because he called on Michael, who was the spiritual protector of Israel, to come and battle this thing off. Well, that was probably a spirit that was in control of a territory or a principality. Like they were divided out, during Babylon, and divided out to the 70 different, say, angels that had territories over the area. But even after the fall, these angels still had the territory, and they're not going to receive judgment until the final days. That's why it says, we will judge angels. So when I look at these, I believe that like some angels were given, certain positions to do certain things. But just because they're bad, it does not mean that they still don't hold positions. I think that's why we see some areas of the earth that are far more afflicted or have more war or things like that than others, because these are, originally an angel that was given over to that territory, or, that given that territory to protect, and they may have fell with Satan, and now so they're not so angelly anymore. So I was just wondering, because I know it talks about those, but it almost in the context of that, the way it looks like is that they're restrained for a time. Like they're told, you can't do anything right now until, the seal has been put on all the people. And then, speaking of the four horsemen as them being released is almost like, it says that some of these things won't come to pass until the restrainer is lifted. So we can, people have always argued what the restrainer is, but it's something that's holding back these forces from attacking at the, in Revelation. So just want to get your opinion on it.
Yeah, well, I believe that there's overlap between the seals and the trumpets. I do think the trumpets start after the seals, but where exactly in that sequence, I don't know. So the people that are getting sealed, are they going to be protected from some of the effects of the seal judgments? Yeah, possibly, depending on when that sealing happens. There could be overlap there. So I think that's possible. And I get what you're saying totally about angels being given certain tasks and being given certain abilities, realms of influence, and they're keeping those things until the day of judgment. I would agree that once they've been assigned something by God, they remain in that until the day of judgment, if they're already evil or if they've already rebelled against God. There were angels who rebelled, who were holy, that God then took them and put them elsewhere. But the ones that are already in a legal battle against God, they're going to keep doing what they're doing in their position until everything wraps up.
Didn't mean to distract that much.
What was that?
I said I didn't mean to distract that much.
No, it's okay.
Tangent, man.
This is how it always is for me. There's always rabbit trails. Okay, so since these are spirit riders, we have to understand how people would have viewed them at the time that the book of Revelation was written. And because these were Romans primarily that John was writing to, they would have been thinking of particular gods in the Greco-Roman pantheon whenever they read Revelation chapter 6, especially when they got to the fourth horseman and the name Thanatos appears, the name Hades appears. Those are the names of particular gods. Now, I realize that those names became words, so the name of the death god became just the general name for death. So you could say, well, it wasn't talking about the god in particular. It's just talking about the concept of death or the concept of the underworld. But nevertheless, in the minds of the people at that time, that was all tied together. There wasn't really a distinction between those things. When they thought about the concept death, they thought about the god death. I mean, that's how the culture worked. And we do a little bit of that in English still today. We have words, but we've dissociated them from the gods for the most part. And they didn't have that experience back then. It was all part and parcel. So when they read about I already mentioned this, but the second horse was red and the rider has this great sword, they're going to immediately think of Mars or Ares, because the red guy with the big sword who goes to bring war, that's the god of war. The third one would have been probably the goddess at the time that this was written. The deity of famine was actually a woman, not a man. But you'll notice in the verse, it doesn't say he when it talks about that rider. It just says the rider. So it could have been a female, or at least that's how they would have thought of it. I don't know if there are any female spirits. I don't ever see that presented in scripture, so maybe not. But these are not, what John was seeing was not the actual Greek or Roman gods. What he was seeing were spirits that have similarities to the gods, because these pagan people, and not just the Greeks and Romans, but even before that, they based their deities on real things about spirits. They knew something about the spirit world. Everybody did in the ancient world. That was commonplace. There was a certain level of knowledge about the spirit world that they had. We just don't, it's totally gone now from everybody except people like us who are reading the word of God. But, they had divination back then. They had people who could really get into the spirit world in a powerful way. There were arcane artists in many different cultures in the ancient world. So they knew things. They had oracles, pagan oracles, who would talk to the gods and would sometimes give important information about how the spirit realm worked. So I think that many of these gods are based on real spirits, but then they took it and they, extrapolated and expounded on it, and you get these crazy myths about the gods and their weird adventures and, well, let's say misadventures. So I'm not saying that what we're seeing in Revelation chapter 6 is the Greek or Roman gods, but there's going to be similarities, as we've already pointed out some. So if they knew who the second rider was and they knew the third rider, famine, okay, we've got a god for that. And they knew the fourth rider and the one who follows him, because that was definitely clearly stated. Who was the first one? What would the Romans have thought when they read about the first one? And my contention is that they would have thought about Apollo. Now, I know some people will probably immediately jump to Apollyon later in the book of Revelation. I don't necessarily think that's a warranted jump, because, as I said, there are words that are the names of gods that became just general concepts. So when we see later on the word Apollyon, does that necessarily mean it's the god Apollo or Apollyon? No, not necessarily, because the word means destruction. And so he gives the name also in Hebrew, which is Abaddon, which again means destruction. So it could be a particular spirit with that name coming out, or it could be just a god of destruction who comes out when the abyss is unlocked. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the same entity that we see on the first horse. But what it looks like to me is that the first rider is Apollyon, and there's a few reasons for that. Number one is I'm actually going to go through 4 different characteristics, and these 4 are going to help us, build this picture. So the first one is the color, white. The second one is the rider's weapon, which is a bow. The third one is the item that he's given by another spirit somewhere off camera, and that's the crown. And then the fourth thing is the rider's actions. What does he do? And there's clues in each of those 4 characteristics to help us understand who it is that is riding this horse. So the first thing is the color, white. And that's a particular word. There are more than one word for white in the Greek language. But this one is lukos. And lukos, let me see if I have the Strong's number here to help out anybody who wants to look it up.
Are you looking for the pale?
Not pale. Pale's the chloros.
Chloros, yeah.
Fourth horse. But the first horse is lukos, and that's I think that's Strong's 3022. And that word doesn't just mean any kind of white. Like, it's not an off-white. It's not a mostly white. It's a shining, brilliant white. In fact, it's associated with things that give off their own light. So you could use the word in reference to snow, which reflects a lot of light, but you could also use it in reference to lightning, which gives off its own light. But it's that kind of a brilliant white color, pure white. And we see it used throughout the New Testament in a few places, some of which are when angels show up and when the Lord was transfigured. In those verses, it uses that word lukos. So we're talking super white. And I thought about Apollo there because he was a god of the sun. And his color was always, the blinding light. So he would be a god that now he's not the only one, but he's a god that you could think of when you read the word lukos. And then I also thought about medicine, because Apollo was not only one who brought plagues, but he healed plagues. He was a healer, and his son is the god of healing, Asclepius. So there's the connotation of healing with that god. And then the medical profession, I remembered, has white as their color always. Look at their lab coats. You look at the hazard suits. You look at the color that they always put on their, the logos in the hospitals and everything. It's always white. So I started thinking along those lines. And then as I went forward looking at the other 3 characteristics, I connected it back to that. And the connection to the medical field made a lot more sense. So we'll have to keep that in mind as we go forward, because it's going to make more sense later. You guys with me so far?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. By the way, I saw somebody posted something about the globe in the comments. I just want to say, because this will really get people off into left field. They're going to be distracted by this. I'm not a heliocentrist. I'm a geocentrist. I think the Bible is pretty clear. The earth is at the center of everything. This is the focus. God comes here at the end of the age. After everything else, he sets up base here for all of eternity. The earth is the place. I don't really care about the shape of the earth, to be honest with you. It just doesn't make a practical difference to me. So you guys free to think whatever you want. I don't really have an opinion. I say globe a lot of times just because that's what I'm used to saying, but if it's flat, it's flat.
No, our audience is used to having Alan Aguirre on here. He makes fun of flat earthers, so.
All right. Well, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to have to eat my words later on if it turns out that you guys are right. No, I don't have a horse in that race at all. So, okay, the second clue. What's that?
A lot of horse jokes tonight.
Dude, have you seen? You just reminded me. What's his name? Man, now I'm drawing a blank. Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah, I see him.
He has a segment about horses that's about 10 minutes long. It is so funny. You got to go look that up if you haven't seen it.
I'll do it.
It's hilarious. All right. The second clue is about the rider's weapon, because when he appears, he's holding a bow. He's not given the bow. He's already holding it. And the thing about the bow is it's a totally defensive weapon, or excuse me, offensive weapon. There's no defensive component to that weapon at all. I mean, unless somebody got really close to you and you tried to whack them with it, but that's not very effective. Generally, your bow is for shooting people at a range, and that's it. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And then when you start to look at the association of bows and arrows in Scripture with, you know, various effects in the world, in the physical world, because of course, you know, there's lots of bows in the historical books of the Bible, but when you're talking about spirit bows or spirit arrows, that's a different story, because those things are usually manifesting as a few different things like war, famine, pestilence, plague, terror. Let's see what else. I feel like there's at least a couple of others, but that's most of the time what you're going to find. You'll find listed a list of things that's basically parallel to the four horsemen. For instance, in Ezekiel chapter 5, verses 15 through 17, Job 6:4, Deuteronomy 32, 18 through 25, and a number of other places, it describes the Lord's arrows and the fact that those bring the plague, the pestilence, the war, the beasts even is listed in, I think, in Ezekiel. So that tells me a lot. That tells me that spiritual arrows, which of course come from spiritual bows, they have the same effects that the four horsemen have. And that ties in with Apollo, because Apollo is a god who had a bow and arrow, and his arrows were arrows of plague. Now, he didn't shoot arrows of the other type because God has it all. God covers all bases. His arrows can be any of those things. It can be terror, it can be beasts, etc. But with Apollo, it was just the arrows of plague. So he was a plague god, and he would also cure those plagues. So he was a god of healing in that sense. So that's the second thing. We've got a sun god who's brilliant white, Lucas type of white. We've got a god who also has a bow and arrow, and he's doing offensive things with it. He's attacking with it. And then let's see. That's it for the weapon, I guess. Let's go on to the third one, which is the crown, which is where things really start to get interesting. Because the rider is handed something. He has the bow already. He's got his weapon, but he needs something else for some reason. He has to be given this crown. And this is what really changed my mind and got me thinking in terms of, okay, this is definitely Apollo, and it has some connection to coronavirus possibly, because the word corona in the Greek here, it's not corona. Corona is Latin, but in the Greek text of the book of Revelation, we have the word Stephanos. But Stephanos is a particular type of crown. There's two words for crown, both in Hebrew and in Greek. In Greek, the other one is diadema. And the diadema is the crown of royalty. It's the one that, you know, kings and queens would wear. But Stephanos is the laurel wreath. It's the crown of victory. It's the one that has the you know, leaves and the other various tines coming off of it that usually doesn't close at the front. Okay. And you can go look at etymological dictionary, and you can find how that Stephanos turned into the word corona in Latin. So he's handed a corona, or he's handed a crown of victory.
Don't mind if I do.
And by comparison, elsewhere in Revelation, we find the word diadema used many times. So John talks about the crown on the heads of the beast or the dragon, and he talks about the crown on Yeshua's head. He talks about crowns that the elders have. these are the diadema, not the Stephanos. So he definitely understood the difference. He wasn't just picking this word at random. Okay, this is a particular choice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John didn't have any way of communicating the idea of a virus or a germ of any kind, because those words the concepts didn't even exist at the time he was writing. So if the ammunition for the bow that this writer is using was a germ like a coronavirus, how would you have communicated that to the ancient people? You really couldn't. You could only hint at it in imagery. And I think that's what's happening here. I think that he was given a coronavirus, not just a crown of victory. Now, he is going out as a victor because it says he goes forth to conquer. And so we've always just assumed, oh, yeah, he was given a crown because he's a victor. But why the need for that? Why the need to present that image rather than just say he goes forth and conquers? Because you could have stopped there. John didn't have to, God didn't have to also add the image of the corona. So why did he do that? And now I'm thinking, okay, what if that was showing that what kicks off this whole sequence of the seals being broken and then the riders going forth and everything that comes after it? What if that started with the coronavirus? That's when you end up at the fourth action, the last clue, which is that he goes forth conquering and to conquer. So I'd always wondered about that. I thought, why repeat it? What's the necessity of repeating that phrase? Because if you could just say he goes forth to conquer and leave it at that, we understand what's being said. Why repeat he'd go forth to conquer again? And now I think it's because this pandemic is in waves. It's not just one and done. So when we started this thing, it happened fast. I mean, really fast. This thing went forth conquering in a very short span of time, in months, which is unheard of, especially at the time John was writing, for anything to go around the world that fast. So this is like light speed. And then it seemed like maybe we were going to, pull things back and it was going to be okay. Nope. Now we've got a second surge and we're still trying to figure out how bad this one's going to be. And I don't even think it's about the damage that the virus causes. I don't think the virus is that deadly. Yes, it has killed people. I've known people who've died. I've known people who've gotten sick from it and recovered. It's bad. It hurts a lot. These people say it's no joke, but regardless, the death rate is not very high. Thankfully, thank God, it's not a high mortality rate, but that's not really the issue. That doesn't even matter because it's the response to the virus that's been so detrimental. It's everything shutting down that is putting the world into a topsy-turvy spin. It's changing the world as we know it in a lot of different ways. So whether the virus is super deadly or not is almost beside the point. It's what is the effect? What has happened as a result of this virus and everybody being scared of it? And I think that is a big deal. That has changed the world. And so the significance of this event and those 4 clues that we just talked about really makes me think that maybe this is talking about coronavirus. And if that's the case, then the horsemen are riding. They're going forth right now.
I always think about, I agree with you, man. I think for sure there's a real virus, but it doesn't warrant what's going on. And I think definitely fear is the virus that's doing the most damage. And I think about Luke 21, where he says, men's hearts will fail them with fear after looking upon those things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. I always think about that, man, because it says their hearts they will fail them, but from fear, not from the stuff, just being scared of it, right? A lot of people are hopeless or they're lost. They don't have any idea what is going on right now. I mean, a lot of us Christians, don't know what the heck's going on. That's what we kind of started off talking about, that, like, how to have a renewed mind is to see the potential for God to move in your situation instead of see how the enemy's doing it, right? All the time. We always give the enemy credit. We're like, oh, he's doing this. This is part of the devil's plan. But we never see God's plan. We never, at least that's not our first, we're not looking for that first, and I think when I was talking about the Egypt thing and how I feel like we're in this place that we're being pulled out of Egypt is, I think a lot of us have been doing some soul searching over the last 10 years or so, and God's told us of the idols and shown us the idols that we have in our own lives, and He gave us an opportunity to pull some of those things out on our own, right? But we didn't do it necessarily all the way, and so He came in, and this is a move of grace that He literally, through this virus, which we're all still here, right? So we didn't get the virus. It didn't kill us. It didn't do anything, right? I may have got the virus. I don't know. I was sick pretty bad in March, or February, but it wasn't respiratory, but I don't know. But I feel like He removed like sports. That's a huge idol, right? He removed a lot of television stuff. I mean, Hollywood, I don't know that they're making anything right now. You know what I mean? I think a lot of things are at a standstill, and a lot of people were praying for, normal, or they can't wait for normal to happen again. Well, I don't want normal to happen, man. You know what I mean? I know it's as uncomfortable as it is to be in this unknown chapter. I feel like God's removed the things that we were unable to get rid of. We were held in bondage by a lot of these things. And so He took it from us, and now we just have to thank Him for it and move past it, right? And stop trying to get back to Egypt, And I just think, like, man, there's so many good things that I get a lot of bad situations got worse, but it created opportunities for us to go out into the streets and share our faith. I don't know how many times we've talked about people now come up to us like all the time. Man, what's going on? Like, I feel like this is right up your alley. Tell us what's happening, what's going on. But it's like it's an opportunity for us to share why we have the hope that we do have, right? And it's an opportunity to share the gospel with people. They're searching for it, man. They're all scared to death. And now, at the beginning of this, man, I thought it would be like a couple months, man. Dude, we're going on like 7 months, of this trash. And it doesn't even look like, the news just keeps getting dumber. It's literally like the world's upside down. Our governor in Ohio tested positive, and then he missed his little appointment. He was supposed to meet Trump. Trump came to visit. He tested positive, couldn't meet Trump. Later that day, he tested again, and it was a negative. What is happening? It's like, but everybody's going, oh, well, thank God, he got that worked. It was just a fluke, but we would never have the opportunity to take 2 tests in a day. We'd be quarantined, right? Our businesses would be shut down. You got just this double standard hypocrisy crap going everywhere. everybody sees it, yet no one is doing anything. And the fact that the mask mandate, I tried telling people about this. Like, the Revolutionary War was fought over 2 cents. They want to raise a tax 2 cents on tea. And we lost our mind. You know what I mean? And we broke free from this oppressor. And now it's like, dude, they made us do all kinds of stuff. We're jumping through hoops for no reason.
People are cowed. But, a lot of people think that look, there's a ton of hypocrisy out there, but I think most people believe that it's the right thing to do to wear a mask because it's protecting everybody. It's helping society at large, to which I would agree if it worked, but the masks don't really work very well at all. But if it worked, I would agree. And I think social distancing works a lot better. If you're not close to people, you're not going to spread the aerosols from your mouth aren't going to get to them as easily. But just the fact that people don't think for themselves. They're not thinking through this stuff. They're just doing what the authorities tell them, and they're listening to the mainstream media, and they're swallowing it all, and then they act like they have the moral authority. Well, how can you act that way when you haven't taken everything into consideration? You're just like a sheep who's following the shepherds of the mainstream media.
Oh man, this is crazy. I'm looking up the Wikipedia of Apollo, and some of the things that says that he delivers plagues with his arrows. That he Apollo delivered people from epidemics, yet he was also a god who could bring ill health and deadly plagues with his arrows. But then I was reading down further. It says Apollo is concerned with the health and education of children. Which is kind of interesting with everything that's going on with the schools.
Oh, that brings me back. Thank you for saying that. I totally passed over a huge thing. The World Health Organization logo. So yeah, I can't believe I almost missed that. So if you take a look at the WHO logo, and we know the reason I'm talking about them is because they had the biggest part to play in the world's response to the coronavirus pandemic. They were, at least at first, they were the ones who were saying what it was and how everybody should act towards it. And their logo now, okay, before I start that, the United Nations is an occult organization. If anybody doesn't know that already, you're way behind. Okay, it's very easy to prove. They were occultists that founded it. There are cultists still running it. There's occult symbolism all over the headquarters, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely not a good organization, but the WHO is part and parcel with the UN. So I already don't trust them because of that. But then I look at their logo, and what do I find? I find a Stephanos, a corona around the whole world. I mean, it's literally surrounding it like it's like a couple of hands, like, you know.
What's kind of funny about that? Because, okay, you know how you're reading in the Greek that passage about this angel or whatever, and it was saying victory and to overcome. Those come from the root words of Nike, and Nike used to carry Hermes's staff, which is right there in the middle of it as well. So conquering victory is what Hermes, what Nike used to carry, or what Nike's name meant. So it's serpent conquering with a crown, basically what you're talking about right here on the WHO logo.
Yeah. Look here. So, well, you can't even see my hand when I do that. You can see the X through it. The X.
Yep.
The four corners.
They've got that. They've actually got the 8 points of the sun disk, right? The sun disk is the circle that has the 8 spokes on it. So that's right there in their logo too. But yeah, superimposed over the whole world.
33 little squares or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't count those. Is it 33?
I don't know.
Well, it'd have to be an even if you look at it.
Yeah, I would have to be even. But superimposed over everything is this snake on a stick. Well, what is that about? Why did they put that there? That is the staff of Asclepius, which is not the same as the caduceus, but it is similar. But Asclepius is the god of health, as I said earlier, who is the son of, guess who? Apollo. He was the god of healing. Well, I won't go into the whole myth as to why, but that's who he was. But the serpent represents to the medical community newness or renewal, because the serpent sheds its skin. So it's always been, and this goes way back in history, it's always been a sign of something transitioning to a new state, a new form of life. But we know, because, well, if you carefully study the word, that there is a class of angels, the highest order of angels probably, called the seraphim. And the seraphim, although they appear in one place, having 6 wings, and I think multiple faces, but the word seraphim actually means the burning serpent. And there's a lot of, I have a whole article drawing together different verses that support this, but just to gloss over all that and go right to the point, that the highest order of angels, which would also mean that it was the part of the divine council, the ones that got control over the whole earth, like you mentioned, Ian, earlier. After Babel, the earth was split up into 70 portions, and these divine ones, the immortals, got control over those because they're in a legal battle against God, and they're trying to prove that they can run the world in a certain way better than he could. So those particular angels are the ones that God was working together with in his council originally, and 70 of them turned against him, and now they're the gods of the nations. Well, those angels are serpentine in appearance. That's why in the book of Revelation, the dragon is a serpent. You know, a dragon, obviously serpentine. He's the red dragon. And it's not just one character. It's not just Ha-Satan. It's the whole order of them, because it's 70. It's represented as 70 in that symbol. You have the 7 heads with 10 crowns on each. That's 70 rulers contained within this one serpent image. So, and we could go a lot into why they're serpents, but that's what I think of when I see the serpent over the whole earth. I think about the gods of the nations. But then Asclepius had not only Apollo as his father, but guess who as his mother? This really sent me reeling. His mother's name was Coronis. So you have in the WHO logo the corona around the earth, and then you have the symbol of the god or demigod whose mother was Coronis. I'm thinking, that can't possibly just be coincidence. To have it twice in your logo. The WHO, to me, at best, is a tool of the enemy, unwittingly, unknowingly. At worst, and probably more realistically, they're indeed responsible for the coronavirus pandemic. I actually think they had something to do with creating and or releasing this thing. And I think that plan is probably built right into their logo. Maybe they didn't know it. Maybe that was something the immortals were doing, and the people, the human beings, just have no idea. They're just puppets. But at least the fallen ones who are in control of this organization have broadcasted ahead of time what they were doing.
I would agree. And I think if you watch my presentation for this year's Take on the World, you'll know that they absolutely know what they're doing. That goes back to the crossroads. Some of these people have made deals. I mean, look at John, what's his name? Not John Denver. Dylan? No, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan just made a new song, 17 minutes long, right? And it's pretty interesting. But Bob Dylan said he still plays because he made a contract, and he has to fulfill his part of the bargain until, it's cut off pretty much. But he says that he made a deal with the devil. There's a lot of people that make deals with the devil, right? I mean, I think it's far more, just like we have the ability to reach out and make contact and have a relationship with God, mm-hmm. Jesus Christ, the counterfeit is possible as well. And the more you dig into Tesla and all of these inventors, they all have these stories of divine encounters, right? Where they've had some kind of exchange with a divine being. And then all of a sudden they come out with their breakthrough, whatever that starts them on their path. And every one of them does it. I mean, a lot of them you'll read in their personal biographies or that they wrote that they don't even know how they came to certain conclusions. It was given to them in some type of download, Mm-hmm. I mean, I absolutely believe that they know. They've just decided. I think even Father Malachi Martin, have you ever heard? Are you familiar with him? He's a Vatican Pope that came out and was talking about things. He was talking about how, that there are certain popes or certain.
He was a Jesuit priest, right?
Yeah, he's a Jesuit priest. There were certain priests in the Vatican that absolutely were serving Lucifer. I mean, and we already know this, but I mean, when you hear it from a personal testimony, it kind of validates you and you feel better about it. And that's what I've got in this show. A bunch of people validating this whole thing over and over. These people that know a lot of these things, and personal testimony from mobsters that went through the second ceremony to be made, and they did a black mass ritual to Lucifer, and all these different things that, I mean, people hear about, they don't know if it's true or not. You know, I absolutely believe that Bill Gates and a lot of these dudes, I can't say every one of them, because a lot of them are just puppets. And a lot of them, it goes back to the whole blackmail networks. I mean, this is how the enemy works with you and me. Shame, right? You commit a sin, the enemy holds it over your head and shames the crap out of you and makes you believe the lies that he's speaking over you about how you become the shame, or you become the act that you committed, as opposed to it just being an act. You become this, right? Like, I'm this, like, I'm worthless now. You start to believe that lie, then he has you, right? And then he's able to manipulate you. And that's the same thing. They've done something and he holds it over that someone's got some kind of something over them. And now and it may be something small in the beginning, and then eventually, as their careers they got more at stake, it's now the lie is so much deeper, and there's so much more on the line. They're not willing to go and turn it over. You know, I mean,
and then there's just a bunch of peer pressure. Once you get enough people who are on that same page, you get the peer pressure. Look at something like Bohemian Grove.
Yeah,
some of these guys, the politicians that went there, they had to have thought that it was totally nuts, but they went because it was the thing to do. Everybody expected you to do it, you know. But it's this crazy ceremony. Like, who thinks this is a good idea?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was that banker, that Belgian banker that came out and was saying that, like, he was in that group. He went. Have you seen this guy? Have you heard of him?
Probably.
He went to the Bilderberg meetings. He went to all these different things. He was very high up in the Swiss banks and stuff. And then he was taken to a ceremony where they were sacrificing children, and he lost his mind because he's like, "What is happening?" And I have to get out of here. And he's like broken, you know, because there are people that get there, and obviously they can't go that far, you know. But there are some who have. It's like what's the Bible say? Their conscience is seared with a hot iron.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it has to be free will. So they had to have made a choice at some point.
God. My wife
can't be redeemed. I believe you can be redeemed up to the moment, but a lot of these people, man, they believe the lie. So one of the things that we like to say on here is, if the truth will set you free, then the only thing holding you captive is the lies that you choose to believe. And that is it, man. I mean, a lot of these people, the only way they're ever going to know any different is if somebody has an encounter with them, like one of us. Somebody knows, and that they're able to bring this truth to them in a loving way, right? To where they're not shaming these people and like treating them. I know a lot of people are, you know, we're ready to kill pedophiles. We're ready to kill these people because they're for some reason we've elevated them to like a higher level of sin than, you know.
Well,
and it is.
The Lord's not against it.
It is. But I mean, we almost like, oh, they're unredeemable for that. You know what I mean? It is. It's kind of like, well, they should have never went there because now they can't be saved. You know.
Listen, my wife works in anti-human trafficking, and I knew people were bad before, but man, the stuff that she comes home with and talks to me about, things that she learns and sees sometimes, it's unreal what people will do. And it's like you said, their conscience gets seared, and they will go to links that most of us would never imagine, doing insidious things to enslave people and use them and abuse them. And it's bad enough when it's grown women that are having this done, but when it's minors, oh man, it just makes me so mad. But they are redeemable, you know, and unless you've like you said, unless you've reached that point, but we don't know who has and who hasn't. So we have to assume that that everyone can be redeemed, even the worst scum of the earth traffickers. You know, they can be redeemed.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the music, going back to what you were saying earlier, in the music industry, man, it's really easy to see these days. It's just blatant. They're not even hiding any of this stuff anymore. It's so easy to see how deep the occult is, because they put the symbols all over their music videos and the shows that they do at the Grammys and halftime, Super Bowl shows and all that stuff. It is just all throughout all those videos and such.
Well, I mean, okay, so there's a disconnect, I think, with a lot of mainstream Christians. We'll just say mainstream Christians, because we all know what that is. Where I've lost my train of thought. So, what were we saying? We were talking about mainstream.
How blatant it is.
Yeah, blatant it is. So that's the thing. We look in the Old Testament, we look throughout the scriptures, and we always see these sorcerers. It's like battles of sorcery, right? When there's a king is encountered with, there's some type of metaphysical something going down, and we think that that was like the old days. But if you study through like the occult and John Dee, and where did that go? Where did technology go? Technology, I mean, is not just physical technology. It's the technology, meaning like the map or the plan of how to do this stuff. It's worked in. I mean, I'm pretty much confident in saying that all intelligence agencies at the core their foundations are black magic in the occult, whether they know it or not. Because I mean, we've adapted, we've merged. The part of the alchemical transformation is man and machine, and we've blended all these different things into. Now we are doing technology, but it's also magic. You know what I mean? We don't know necessarily how it works, but we see the result and we're happy with it. We don't care because it seems complex, so we don't want to know. But they won't tell us the materials that they use to build the iPhone, or you know what I mean? There's some type of hidden part of the patent or whatever that they won't share with us. And there's a lot of quartz. There's a lot of other precious stones and metals and things that are used in these things. And what if John Dee's black mirror, his scrying tablet, which you peered into to see visions of the future and communicate with entities, and that you would give and receive knowledge, what if that became or was merged into modern cell phones or some type of, you know what I'm saying? And it's not that cell phones are all evil, but the same type of technology.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, the alchemists were an occult group. That came from actually the technology of the Watchers. It was their attempt to relearn some of the things that have been lost that we got from the Watchers, and then to move forward with technologies based on what they discovered. And the alchemists' discoveries really undergird most of modern science. So the technologies that we have today really come from occult studies of past centuries. And that's, like you said, it's not the technology that's evil. The technology is neutral in and of itself, but it's what people are doing with it. And it's what the inventors intended it to be used for, and the kinds of rituals that they're carrying out through the technologies that they're putting in people's hands.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard a very high level occultist say, I think it was actually Michael Aquino. Are you familiar with Colonel Michael Aquino? He said that if you can imagine the world behind the scenes, it would look a lot like a dinner table with these huge giant creatures of mythology sitting around it with finger cuffs, chaining them to the tables, into their seats or whatever. And he said, as long as the meal is prepared and constantly coming and the tables are being set before them, then they don't try to break out, they're fine. But once, if there's a glitch in the system and for some reason they aren't appeased by their veneration or their meal, then they will easily break through these cuffs and all hell breaks loose. And he said, so the job of the occultist is to set the table, keep the table set. I mean, I think about this and I think about how a lot of people now are like, Trump's going to abolish abortion. if that happens, which I hope it happens, okay, I believe that is the number one thing that we can do as a church is do that. That's 44 million babies a year, right? But that's also the feast. You know what I mean? You cut that off, and he's giving a pretty clear example of the truth. I think these things are held at bay as long as they're being venerated. I mean, and then all hell breaks loose. So I very clearly think that revelation in the time of persecution is also hinging on the church calling, down the judgments. We are praying the judgments upon ourselves. I mean, and that's, it's like a win-win. We're taking one or giving it to the enemy, but yet persecution is being ramped up on us, and it's all the same thing. So a lot of people think, well, hopefully we get some more grace, period. But man, let's just get the heck out of here. You know what I mean? Let's do this thing so that we can go home, or, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Being holy and changing the world for righteousness makes the enemy really mad. Just as you were saying, I mean, he's going to come against you. And all we have to do is look at the history of Israel when they were walking the way they should be uprightly. And they were in good standing with Elohim, then they were blessed, but they were also coming under attack often. I mean, they had some serious enemies. In fact, they had giant enemies sometimes. So they had other nations to deal with because Satan did not like them succeeding, and he would bring things against them. Now, the external enemies, God would protect them, and usually that stuff did not prosper as long as Israel was righteous. So what the enemy ended up doing was getting at them from within, and that's what he's doing here too. Right. So yeah, we got to be careful. The more ground we take, the more there's going to be, what's the word? Kickback.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. We gotta be ready for it.
So, Alexander, have you looked deeper into the next horse, in Revelation 6:4? Have you started looking into that yet? Because I know you did the kind of post about the first one tied with the coronavirus. Have you kind of looked at the red horse, the fiery horse with the sword?
I think that one's less of a mystery. I think that's World War. I think there's enough other prophecies in Scripture to show us that the whole world is going to descend into war. It's not going to be a regional thing. It's going to be worse than World Wars I and II. It's going to be honestly global. But we're using bigger weapons now, so of course it's going to be worse. Let me tie this to Second Baruch since we started out talking about that. Second Baruch gives a breakdown of the last days into 12 different phases. And there's some overlap between the phases, but the first phase is the beginning of commotions, which I feel like is what we're in now. The second phase is the slaying of the great ones. That's really interesting to me. And I've been feeling like what's going to lead to that may be this whole Ghislaine Maxwell thing. And, there have been problems before. Well, Pizzagate, for one. There have been things that kind of got people's eyes opened to how much evil there is in the elite segment of society and the rich and the powerful. But it was always swept under the rug somehow or other. It was always kind of buried. This is the first time that I think maybe there's not going to be any way they can bury this. I think even if at this point, even if they kill her like they did Epstein, if she gets suicided, then people are going to be aware enough. And I think that it's going to be like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, okay, enough of this. You can't keep covering this stuff up. We know that there are some big names that were going to be implicated here. So people might rise up. I'm just guessing, but it feels like maybe that's what's going to set it off, because I've wondered, what does it mean, the slaying of the great ones? What could cause everybody, especially in this world today, what could cause everybody to rise up and kill the elites and probably a lot of the politicians?
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of anything that would really cause that other than maybe the system, the grid going down and people not having access to their bread and their entertainment anymore. Because right now, as long as the bread and the circuses keep coming, people are okay. They're fine. They're placated. So they're not going to rise up against much of anything. But lately, we've seen that start to happen more, where we've had riots around the world, Paris and other places. And you've had, of course, the protests here that have turned violent in a lot of places because of the Black Lives Matter. And things are getting more heated. But I think if something was going to push that over the edge into really serious action by a lot of people, it would probably be finding out that people in positions of power have been not only pedophiles, but have been doing satanic rituals in many instances and killing minors.
Yeah.
So that's
we brought that up a couple weeks ago. Remember, we talked about some of the deaths that were happening, cult leaders, these big time occultists like Michael Aquino. Supposedly he died. He's a big pedophile. He's the guy that invented the term psyop, psy warfare. He wrote all that for the U.S. military. He was also the leader of a church of Set. He's the satanic priest of the military. He is in charge of all chaplains for the military, which is crazy, right? The chaplain services were set up by a Satanist so that they have access. That's some of the crazy stuff that you don't even know. But and he said there are satanic grottos on every military base around the world. And and when he died, and then we see some of these other guys die. We're going to see Soros die. We saw the head Bush, Poppy Bush, die. And like a lot of this stuff is hinging on when they die, things will be released. But what's happening is the power is going to someone else. So these, like when you build golems and when you build all these different trinkets and things like that going on in magic, the only way, if it's like, say you're having a magical war, you kill this guy, you assume his power, his energy force, right? So you get all of his cool things. So like, and they show you this in videos. Yeah. But I mean, somebody's taking out the elites, and just like it says when the first beast comes, or the second beast comes and takes over for the first beast, it says he takes all the power of the first beast. He assumes all the power of the first beast. They came before him, right? It's like they're being killed, but they're being taken by other entities.
I mean, I've heard many testimonies of like high level occultists that to be able to move to the next level, you have to get powerful enough and have the kahunas enough to kill the guy who's above you. And once you finally get to that position, that person's old, frail, whatever, you take over his position by basically taking him out. And I think that's pretty interesting.
That's what's happening. I think there's a lot of them dying right now. I mean, we had a bunch of releases right after George Bush Sr. died. All this stuff like started coming out, which we already knew, but it became mainstream. Like you began to be able to Google things. Like we talked about before, all of a sudden now conspiracies are like easy to find. You can find tons of documents on certain conspiracies now when it used to be hard, Now it's like, oh, you want to know about JFK or whatever? It's like, here's a huge plethora of stuff that just got released. It's like,
I think he's 100% accurate. And the reason why I was asking about the second horse is because we've talked time and time again about how what's happening in 2020 has set a precedence. So, if a virus comes through now, the government can sound the alarm and everybody masks up. If you dislike something that the government or the police or something has done, you can go into that city and basically tear it to shreds in the name of your movement. And we've kind of seen this happening. I'm last week for most people that were in here last week, I joined a group called Save the Children when it was only had about 200 some people. Since last week, when I talked about it, there were 3,000 last Wednesday when I talked about it. It's ramped up to 14,000 plus people on this Indianapolis Save the Children's page. And these are popping up individually for each city, major city across the country. So I definitely think this is going to be something that people are going to start calling for the heads of these pedophiles and even people even joked about playing Pokemon with pedophiles. where you go and you pull up the pedophile registry and start catching pedophiles.
Find them all.
I'm not yeah, I'm not kidding.
No,
I mean, literally,
because it seems like the justice system is not going to deal with it, and I think people are going to have to take it into their own hands. We're going to get mobs. We're going to get groups of vigilantes, and I don't think it's wrong.
The scary thing is, though, no, because who's going to argue with that? But the scary thing is there was a New World Order agenda set for 2030. Ian, you know the exact page for this. One of their 17 agendas for the future was that they would remove child sex trafficking, child slavery, and across the entire world. So it's almost, again, the Hegelian dialectic where they cause the problem, the people react, they are going to deliver the solution. So they're going to hand a handful of, low-level pedophiles to the people, like we said, bread and circuses. What did Rome used to do? They used to take the Christians and throw them to the lions. The people loved it. You know what I mean? Yep. All you have to do is take a few of the low level, if you think of the mafia, you've got the dons, the people at the top, then you have the people just underneath them and the people underneath them. Well, the low level street pedophile, all they got to do is hand them over to the people and say, look, we fixed the problem. And all the people in the pyramid all the way up to the top don't get caught. So yeah, there will be a big backlash that we're going to see from this as it's going to continue to grow, because these people they're fed up. They're finding all of the pedophilia symbols on their toys, the things that their kids are playing with, the programs their kids are watching. Parents, now that they didn't have football and all this soap operas and movies and all these distractions, are now actually paying attention to their children, thank God. But they're starting to realize that the entire world has been trying to get at their children, both mentally and physically, and they're starting to fight back. But they've already predicted this. When did this come out, Ian? When that 17 things for the New World Order, was that 2 or 3 years ago?
It's the global. What is it? The 17 global, the UN global
initiative, right? It's like,
sustainability, global UN sustainability thing. But yeah, they already said that one of their goals was to end human trafficking and child trafficking globally. So every time. When we talked about this when we did our expose on Q, and how Q is the 17th letter. There are 17 global goals. It's all part of the magic that they're trying to work. And one of those goals happened to be no more sex trafficking. Well, then they throw out Epstein. And you notice Ghislaine Maxwell, they're prosecuting her, but not really. And the only thing that she's being indicted for is crimes before 97, which everybody else, like Epstein and the rest of the cohorts, there was 200 people indicted in that. They were all let go. So she's now going to be drummed up on trafficking charges and actually none of her charges are trafficking or sex with minors. It's some other crazy, stupid stuff, but it's from before 97. So this is, and this is how a lot of people are getting exposed to this stuff. They think that Epstein and Maxwell are the people, and that's what they're going to make it look like. Whoever it is that goes down for this, it will appear that they were the ringleaders, because part of this whole Q narrative is that it's a Gnostic thing. All of a sudden, we're going to get rid of evil and elevate our consciousness and jump to another level of humanity, right? But we have to destroy the evil. And so we're exposing the truth. We're going to expose the evil and then take these people out. And that's the Great Awakening that's happening right now. That's what they claim. And that once this is done, we'll have peace. So, because there's only 5 bad guys. You know what I mean? It's this is nuts.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of
the rest in the heart of all people.
Yeah,
sure.
They want to hate somebody. It's 1984. You're 2 minutes hate. They're giving you somebody to hate. Heck, we don't even know if some of these people are real that they tell us. Or, you know what I mean? Because we don't know who they are. We only see a picture of them. We only see this profile that we can find on Google, which they own. You know what I mean? It's it's just, we really don't know anything at this point.
They could be pulling our strings in a lot of different ways, and we wouldn't have any idea. Well, okay, so just to finish up what we were talking about in Second Baruch, the third part of the 12 after the slaying of the great ones. The third part is the fall of many by death. So we're not talking about just the great ones here. This is many, meaning general populace. Many people will die in that phase. But then the fourth phase is the sending of the sword. And that's what I would correlate with the second horseman, especially because a little bit further on, elsewhere in Baruch, it says that whatever befalls the earth in those days in the consummation of the times, it will befall the entire earth, that everybody will be subject to it. So when it says the going forth of the sword, it has already defined the fact that that's talking about globally. The sword is going to be unleashed. So that would, to me, be correlating with that red horseman.
That's interesting. Are you familiar with Russ Dizdar?
Yeah, a little bit.
You know, he has a book called The Black Awakening, and that's that's correlated with the red horse prophecy. So this whole demonic hordes of, like possession, just gripping the world, and just people going crazy. The armies of Antichrist type of thing. Because either you're sealed or you're not. So either you're, you can be possessed, or you've already been possessed by Christ, right? So I just think a lot of people don't sign up to be part of that army, but they will be. If they have open doors, they become a vessel that can be taken or oppressed into something. But I think that's pretty interesting that you said that after the destruction of many, because isn't there where it talks about a third, or is it a third, where it says there's so many bodies that that God sends the birds to clean up the bodies, and it takes like 7 months.
Well, that's the last battle. That's at the very end of the age when you have
that's the last
all those bodies. But a quarter of the earth, according to the fourth seal, a quarter of the earth is killed and then it lists a number of things that kill people: by the sword, by pestilence, by the beasts of the earth. So all those things are going to be adding to the death count. And I kind of wonder what the beasts of the earth means. I think it may be a catch-all where it's not only talk, because the word there is therion. It means actual beasts, like animals. But we also know that same word therion is used throughout Scripture to talk about people that are terrible, that are set against God, and that are particularly evil.
Right.
So, the beast from the abyss and the beast from the sea, which is, a man and a kingdom, respectively. Those are both therion. So,
well, I think it's interesting. If you read Joel 2, I think most of us grew up thinking Joel 2 was speaking, you remember we are the Joel 2 army, like we used to have that song. When you read Joel 2, there is a section at the very, very bottom of it that talks about God's army, but the whole first part talking about the Joel army is it's called, even in the scriptures, it's called the locust army. And it says they jump over like mountains and buildings and climb up walls and stuff like that. And I think it's part of the Black Awakening and those that take the mark. I think that's why they've conditioned us with the zombie apocalypse so much, because those that take the mark break out in legions. They search for death and can't find it. And if they're associated with the Joel 2 army, then they're jumping over built. It's like World War Z, it's pretty interesting. And then of course, back to what you were saying, they're going to be more beasts than men, because if they are possessed by these consuming Nephilim children that were cannibalistic before, now they're given bodies again and they're seeking after the flesh. What are they going to be doing? They're going to be running around attacking people, killing people, murdering, stealing, raping, all kinds of things, because
they could be more beast than man now. We could be. We don't know what's in our vaccines, what's in our food. We could be having our, GMOs could be altering our DNA as we speak, and we don't know yet. But I mean, I believe that if you're sealed by God, that He's regenerate. He'll regenerate your body, and you won't be affected. But like, we don't really know what's going on, and we this could be the beginning, like you said, the cure to this coronavirus could be worse, than it could be the start of vaccines and all these different things that we're forced to take, and it begins to change people's DNA into beasts, so to speak.
Alexander, did you see somebody that broke down the Greek for hydroxychloroquine, where it's like water and hydro and oxy, it's hydroxy is water and air, and then the chlora is pale or green. It's the Greek word for the pale horse, And then quin is where we get the Greek word for equestrian, which means horse. So the hydroxychloroquine is like water pale horse, or whatever. So I think it's pretty interesting. So everything that's tied with it. I mean, even with the testing facilities they had down in, I think it was in Florida, where they had these COVID-19 testing facilities with the head of Anubis on the trailers. You know what I mean? The god that, it's like, why, of all of the imagery, why would you use that,
Well, I think subconsciously they're guided. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's legit how it is. They may not know, but
that's the reason that they put the Indian goddess Kali.
Yeah.
No, not Kali. Shiva. The god Shiva.
Yeah.
Out in front of the CERN. Yeah. What? Why would you? Yes, he's in a ring. Okay.
the god of destruction at the center point of CERN. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't bode well. Why would you do that?
Yeah,
because I think it's all. I think it ultimately is like on a subconscious level, they're honoring the deities that are associated with this. And it seems like when I've studied the Nephilim and the fallen angels, it seems like they've always kind of left their mark. Like they have. It's like almost like a gang where they have to tag what they're associated with. So you see these like kind of different symbols. Like the Nazi symbol. You've seen that kind of trail throughout history from the Scythian people through the Chinese into the Nazis. Like it's almost like their banner, like these symbols for them and the associations. Like I was called this god and this god and this god and this god.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I was
need to clarify something real quick, because people are coming in and they're saying we're saying that coronavirus is a judgment, like it's a real thing and it's killing people and all that, So we need let's go back and talk about what we actually said. We didn't actually say that coronavirus is the horseman.
Right. No, the coronavirus would be the crown that was handed to him. That would potentially be the Stephanos that was given and would be used for his bow, because we're told he has a bow. We're not told he has any arrows. Where does he get his ammunition from? Now, it could be that it just doesn't mention the arrows, because when you have a bow, it's assumed you're going to have arrows. But it's also possible that the thing that's handed to him is the ammunition. It's the coronavirus. And it's not that the virus itself is really that deadly. That's not, it's beside the point. It's that what he's able to do with that virus, the changes that he's able to make across the world using that virus, is what's significant. And that's what we've seen. Not that the virus is that deadly, but that the fear reaction to the virus changes everything. And nobody's going to argue the fact that coronavirus has literally affected the whole world negatively.
Right.
It's changed everything.
Well,
So
again, I was going to say, again, what we said is this is a precedent. They may have rolled this out just basically to kind of get people used to the idea of this being an annual thing. And the next one that they roll out could be COVID-20, could be COVID-21, COVID-22, whatever they decide to roll out, or whatever they call it, we know that they have the ability to genetically engineer viruses, and they got the response they wanted for this one. Now it may be, we need to roll out something bigger next time, or we need to roll out something that's targeted people genetically, but they've already set the precedence. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about in my presentation, because it's about Rh negative blood and the blood types, about how certain blood types are able to fend off other viruses and stuff. They literally have the ability to not only target genetically a certain type of people or a certain race of people, but they can target you based on your genetics and your blood type. So the next one could roll out. Like, I think this one really was kind of targeted towards elderly people. Because that's what we saw.
Did you see the numbers that they're talking about for what's his name, Cuomo, over in New York? Just him alone, the numbers were completely fudged, which we already knew. But for deaths inside the senior homes, okay, so they're already saying that there's like 6,000 dead. Okay, they said the numbers are bad by I think they said there's something wrong with them. They could be 3 times that, right? Which probably means they're like 6 times that. So 36,000 maybe seniors died because they sealed them in there, but then they also put quarantine patients into the homes with the elderly.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I mean, you have to think about it too, and a lot of
These guys, and there's like nothing. How could we have known? What in the world are you know what I mean? Like, no one's. It's like they're setting this up, and part of the thing we talked about with this Nasara and the reset and all that stuff with the financial reset coming. Part of the whole Nasara launch thing says that they will retrain the legal system. It says that all members of the Bar Association will go away, and all lawyers or past members will be retrained on constitutional law. So why in the world would they be planning on retraining people on constitutional law unless, or if there was going to be any kind of justice with the Constitution now, right? They almost have to like do the exact opposite so that they can come in and be like, obviously we need to reteach you. But I think it's so funny that Hillary, Bill, Obama, all these queers are all constitutional law professors. It's like, it really is like a perfect setup, dude. They've been setting this up for a long time.
They just throw it right out the window.
Yeah, they purposely taught, away from the Constitution to get us to this point where nothing can be done because it's so bad. And we're just going to get fired up and pissed off about more stuff coming down the pipe because literally they're just going to come out with the whole, yeah, they're super guilty, but no one can prosecute because, it's like, it's insane. But if it's their plan.
Well, I look at it as if this round of the virus or creation or whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. We know that what it's doing. And if this was targeted towards elderly people, then you're basically removing the old guard. So you're removing the people that remember what it was like in the early 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. Once they start going away, and you have this new group of children. And there was I can't remember who the occultist was, but it was I'd have to think about it for a second. But it literally said, if you give us the schools and we take God out of the teachings of schools, we'll have an entire generation in our under our control within a generation. So we had the old guard, the greatest generation have slowly been fading off. I believe this was part of the thing to kind of get rid of the last of them. Then you have the baby boomer generation, grew up in the 60s, free love, drugs, all that kind of stuff. And they're screwed up generation of kids who have now had a generation of kids who have had another generation of kids. Now we're moving into this new generation. I think it's kind of funny that we named them X, the Generation Z, and now we're into Generation Alpha. It's starting over. Like my kids' generation, my daughter's generation is Generation Alpha. So there's a whole new, it's like we got to clear out the old and then we have control of the new. And and I feel like that's what they're doing. They're going to be targeting this stuff. And this is why we've been saying over and over again why it's so important to be under the protection of the Father, because they're going to try. If my mom's still listening, she'll be able to say this, but she just sent me a video today of a predominant pastor who was basically praying against the curse that's tied to the coronavirus. That he was woke up in the middle of the night, in the middle of July, about shown a vision of how Satan has put a curse that's tied with this, that's trying to attack the people. And so we know this as the fear, the panic. We're seeing this. You can't scroll through your news feed without somebody attacking somebody else for not wearing a mask or wearing a mask, or whatever it is, that people are turning fear into a virtue. We've talked about this over and over again. This is part of this process that they're rolling out. It's a little bit bigger than what we're looking at. So like I said, we can argue all day about whether or not it's real, whether it's this, whether it's not. What doesn't really matter. It's the actions that have proceeded from it and how it's progressing further. So
the loss of freedom, the increase of global government and tyranny in general. That's the important stuff. So unfortunate that it's happened so quickly. I mean, I knew that people were primed for that kind of thing because, just all the little things that let you know that people are willing to give their responsibility over to government. And the fact that the federal government has just been growing and growing and growing year after year, that kind of tipped me off. But the fact that people were willing to change their behavior overnight almost overnight because of the fear of this virus. Without really, most people didn't ask a whole lot of questions, didn't think really deeply about it, just kind of went with the party line. Of course, the same thing happened in 2001 with 9/11, and a lot of the freedoms that were given up at that point without people really thinking through that whole scenario and how strange it was. For a number of reasons, but let's not get off onto that conspiracy.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the other aspect of it is we talk about the fear, right? We know that God is not like the author of chaos, that he tells us not to fear anything else, but having the fear and reverence for our God in heaven, right? But we have seen nothing but continuous fear being pushed forward. If it's not the riots, the looting, it's the lack of police protection, it's the virus itself, and the vaccination. I'm a part of many different vaccine groups and conspiratorial groups. My feed is full of people being terrified about being forced to be vaccinated. There's another layer of fear that you're not even paying attention to. They've instituted that fear into the truther community. Like we're feeding. I mean, if you can we talked about this many times before, is that the movie Monsters Incorporated, where they send a monster in to collect the screams, the terror of the children, right? And we see this in the occult. This whole fear thing is like you're feeding a cauldron, and there's a bunch of witches standing around the outside of it, stirring it, and they're going to use whatever fear that they can get and however they can get it. And I see the truther community just going ape with this. Oh, well, this is going to be the mark of the beast, and this is this, and this, and this, and they're going to force us to do this. You're feeding the fear. It's another avenue of fear. They're playing us in every different which direction you can think of. They know the truther community at this point better than we know ourselves. And that's the thing that I've been trying to warn people over and over and over again about falling into these traps from the truther community. And, because there are people that are being interjected into the truther community that are constantly putting out disinformation, lies, things like that. I saw it with 5G. I've seen it with the vaccination stuff. Of course, these things are things to be concerned about, but I am literally seeing people giving themselves over to fear in all of these cases. And we shouldn't be trusting in a mask, just like we shouldn't be trusting in a vaccine, just like we shouldn't be trusting in our police force. All of these things that have been stirred to cause fear and panic in all of us, we should be trusting in the Messiah and our Father in heaven, right? Yeah. We don't place our faith and our hope in any of the things that man creates or institutions that they have, governments, anything like that. It should be solely in the protection of God. So don't fall into it, guys. Don't fall into the fear. They're trying to suck it from us too.
Right. Yeah. And I thought the fear and anxiety was bad enough just from the left when Trump became president. And since then, they have to take mental days off just because every time Trump does something they don't like, they have to, go hide at home and do their little self-care or something. But there's so much fear and anxiety from that. And I thought that was bad enough. But when this whole coronavirus thing started, man, that fear blossomed even more. And it's because they don't have any hope, I think. Well, it's a lot of things, but that's one of the things. There's no hope there. Obviously, the Bible tells us over and over and over again, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Yep. Don't be deceived.
And don't be deceived. Yeah. So we have to implement that. We shouldn't be afraid. At the same time, I think that it's fine to be cautious when caution is warranted. And I tell people don't test God, because I think I like when people are not afraid. What I don't like is when I see Christians falling over to the extreme of, oh, I'm just going to act as if it's, everything is perfectly normal and trust God to protect me. And there's a faith in that I think is great, but I wouldn't run out onto a battlefield with no weapon and no armor and no training, and they're like, God's going to protect me. Well, you just put yourself in that situation. He might not. Like pastors who play with snakes. God's not telling you should play with snakes, okay? He's saying that if something bad were to happen, then he will be there with you. He will protect you in that time. But if you've gone and done it to yourself, he might just smack you over the head and call you an idiot. Don't do that. So, yeah, be cautious, but there's no reason to be afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I definitely agree. I think that's something that we really need to stay on top of, because I mean, I'm even seeing it roll out with the idea of Biden and Kamala Harris being our future presidents, and what's going to happen where they're going to, Biden's going to get in and then he's going to die, and Kamala Harris is not an illegal United States citizen, so it's going to roll over to the head of the Congress. What's her name? Or the head of the Senate, Pelosi, and Pelosi's going to destroy the entire United States. So it's I can it's like every news article, it's a new thing to scare you into submission.
I will shut the show down after this because we're just going to keep going if we can. I think, come on, let's be reasonable here. You honest to God think that they've had 8 years. They had 4 years of the last campaign of Obama. They had 4 years to think of somebody to put up for a Democrat, right? They didn't find nobody. Then now they've had 4 more years, or almost 4 years of Trump. They can't find anybody but Biden. Okay, this is so not. Funny.
He's an old white guy. Like
this is not that hard to figure out, man. They're all the same. That's what I'm trying to get at. This is good cop, bad cop. They're the same. They push for the same things. Yeah, one goes a little far extreme this way, the other one goes that way, but somehow we end up down this middle path that sucks, still. So either way, we lose something every time, and they gain. So I think what they're doing by putting Biden up is saying, I think we can get a lot of what we want with Trump in. Because look what they've done already. It's almost insanity to think
Congress. It's going to be, if they can take all of Congress, if the left can take Congress, then they can.
Well, I mean, Trump started this whole campaign based off of, he said, make America great again, but he also wanted the 4th industrial revolution, which was the technological revolution. He wanted to push the technology. They need technology. The left does. And Trump's going to put that in for them, right? And we'll be gung-ho about all that. So they're going to get their contact tracers, with the new technology. You get the new iPhone, it's already on there. You know what I mean? All this stuff, the smart grid, the smart meters, all these different things are already in place. We're just going to be pushing that agenda further. They're cutting their losses with, we may not get that far with this, but this part, we're going to push that sucker way up, and it's
I think it's moved past the ability and of the law where we're at right now, because what we've moved into with this new way of life that they've set us forward is, it doesn't matter what the law actually is. It's what the business is. It's what the people enforce. So now, yes, nobody is supposed to be able to tell you what to do if you wanted to walk around without a mask. Some states are actually moving into a place where you don't want to wear a mask. They're going, I think it was Michigan or something like that. They're going to start locking you up if you don't wear a mask. Like, they're passing these laws. But what the biggest thing is they've got the social media to censor you. They've got Google to censor the stuff there. They have the people that are so in fear. And like we said, they turn fear into a virtue, that those people are actually becoming the enforcers. What do they need police officers for? When they've got little Karens running around yelling at people to put on their masks and assaulting people. It's getting to the point. And then again, you don't like something that the government or somebody is doing, then you riot. All of this has been set as a precedent. It doesn't matter what the laws are. Did it matter what the laws are when people were burning the cities down? Did it matter what the laws are when a business kicks you out because you don't wear a mask? They don't have to sell to you. It doesn't matter at this point. The laws don't matter. What do they need the president? What do they need Congress for? They need the people to enforce it. That's what social justice warriors are all about, is the enforcement of the people by the people. And that's what we're going to start seeing, I think, more and more as we progress.
Well, none of these soy latte boys better try to stand in. I'll run them over, I'll deal with it on the other end, I guess.
Wow, they're getting ballsy now, though. They're the ones buying the guns. We just had some people in our city. Yeah. Like pulling guns on people. And these were part of the BLM.
I just saw the size of that truck. The guy standing in front of the truck with a gun, like a gangster. And that truck's like, it's a big
He's lucky it was on that side of town, because
Whoops,
that would
I
have
accidentally
happened.
hit the wrong pedal, you know?
That would
Crushed
have
a
happened
little.
on some of the other sides of town in Indianapolis, and you would have gotten shot about 30 different ways from, so.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
But I mean, like I said, as they keep building the fear up, we're going to see more and more progression of this. We're going to have, I just can't believe the amount of like kahunas I see on like 70-year-old ladies with masks on at grocery stores, talking smack to people that are twice their size. I mean, it's almost like I said, they've turned fear into a virtue. Like, this person feels like they're seriously like doing something with their lives by yelling at another, mom or a husband or somebody because they're not wearing a mask. I mean, that's how people get tore up, like, I don't know what is empowering. Well, I mean, I guess I do know what is empowering people, but it's just crazy to see the extremes of how people went from being somebody who was just a quiet little grandma walking through the grocery store to now yelling and screaming at people because you're putting their life in danger because you didn't wear a thin little cheesecloth, so it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of zeal can be good when it's properly directed, but when it's misdirected, it's awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, if only we had that kind of zeal to speak out against the sin in our society,
Absolutely.
we
Right.
probably would never have gotten to this point. But we
Yeah.
let
Yep.
the little things go, and we didn't get on people's cases, and we didn't help them try to change in past decades. And now, where are we?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Ian has this whole spiel about how sin's been the virus that's been killing people for thousands of years, and we never said anything about that. So.
Still killing your neighbors, and it's the invisible enemy that Trump talks about, the invisible enemy that's killing your neighbors, and we're all in this together, and yet we haven't said a word about this. You see your neighbor, he's an alcoholic, or whatever, he lost his job, but we don't want to pry. We don't want to go over and talk to them in any way, right? We'll try to find them on Facebook, but we won't go and actually go over there because, who knows? And that's part of one of my talks at the conference is going to be on, a lot of people are talking about child trafficking. Let's end child trafficking, but they don't talk about that majority of these kids are trafficked from their own home, their parents, and how are we going to get to these kids unless we meet our neighbors or take some responsibility for witnessing to our community, because this could very well be happening right next door to you. And it probably is. I went to a thing like 2 weeks ago in my city, and we had a woman from the local women's halfway house type thing. And she was talking about how she had 2 women there right now that are in their 20s that had been trafficked since they were 3 years old by their fathers. And like these kids don't know anything but that. So when we look at these girls and we're like, they dress sleazy, yet they've been trained that they are only worth something when they're able to perform, and that's what they were made for. And they don't know any different. But we don't want to take responsibility for that kind of stuff. We just want to go.
Time will go after those people, the people that have been coerced and abused and forced to do things that they don't want to do. But they won't go after the pimps. They won't go after the family members who are making them do that or whoever else is doing the trafficking. That's what's really twisted, is that we try to make the prostitutes are the ones that are the enemies when really they're the victims.
Yeah. And Aaron, I found another 17, bro. So we were talking about the 17s, how these cycles of numbers that it's God's cycle. He's the one that created these things. When these numbers pop up and the enemy, we see these numbers and we always assign them to Illuminati numbers, right? They use the numbers, and there's the 33. That's the number of masonry or whatever, right? We know we're always quick to analyze the enemy, right? Instead of seeing what God's doing. But anyways, I'm joking around with the 17, but this is Isaiah 1:17, and this is kind of a mandate for all of us. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, and plead for the widow. That's one of my verses that I'll be using, but rebuke the oppressor, man. Nobody else can do that but us. and we're not doing it as much as we should be. We should be. I mean, our voices should be gone with the amount of insanity that's in our streets. We should be prayer walking. Our voices should be gone. You know what I mean? I mean, we should be rebuking this stuff. Don't let it have control over your family, your surroundings, your neighborhood. Take ownership. Everybody took ownership. This kind of goes with the same thing that, we started something called Mission 242, and it's, based on Acts 242. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to prayer, to fellowship, and the breaking of bread. And this is about house church. This is about community. And that's how we win, right? We get unified. We build community. We have conversations. Discipleship happens best in circles rather than in rows, right? So in this, you have to go out and do. So this is the Great Commission. You can't, and that's one of the attacks too. Stay away from everybody. Social distance. Don't hug anybody. Don't touch anybody. If you have elderly people in your family, never see them again. You know what I mean? Like, don't go anywhere around them until we tell you it's all clear. And if we were listening to them, it'd be 7 months probably. At least.
They're saying it's going to be several years that we're going to be wearing masks. Right. Is the latest.
Humanizing. That's right. So humanizing.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just think, the mandates are not that. God's word is pretty clear. I mean, we're supposed to be out there. We have authority. We should, the kingdom of God suffers violence, and the violent take it by force, right? And we should be out there, man.
Yeah, no, that's a good call, and that convicts me because, I post things on social media and I talk to people in my circles and I put out videos, but I don't get out there in the street corners and I don't get out there where a lot of unsafe people are and tell them how they can be saved from all the things that they need saved from. That's something I should do more.
Yeah, well, you should look into our 242 ministry. It's literally, Ian and I both have done it, where we went and made some flyers, which Ian can create the graphics for you.
Got one somewhere.
We went around to our neighborhood and we handed out the flyers and we did a cookout, and had our Christian friends and family members that were there to help make the conversations more organic. So it wasn't like, hey, all in the number neighbors, come over here so I can beat you over there with the Bible. But we got introduced to our neighbors and had some good fellowship, a good conversation. We ate, had a meal, and we prayed at the end. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's
not. I think we've as a Western culture, we've gotten away from what the commission was all about. I mean, we put a lot of emphasis on knowledge and a lot of emphasis on how many years you've been saved. That's what qualifies you to tell people, oh, he's a baby Christian. Kanye West just got saved. He's not allowed to tell anybody about Jesus. Well, if he was in another country, if you talk to a missionary, they're like, hey, as soon as you have an encounter, you don't need to know anything except the fact that you encountered Jesus and your life was changed. That's all you need, right? And I feel like when you think about things like this, it makes it so simple. It's like we always feel like we have to be strategic in how we share the gospel. It's organic, man. I mean, if you really have a relationship, you cannot help but share it, And so when you just go have an organic cookout, if there is such a thing, right? You invite people over, you have a cookout, and you just, you talk about your life. You don't start it off with, I have 4 points that I want to address in your crooked, your crooked life that we want to straighten out before you go home, or whatever. And it's not like that at all. And you may not even say anything, but you're going to model your Christianity, your faith, right? You're going to say a blessing over the meal, and you're going to present yourself in a manner that would be, worthy of his name, because that's what it means to not take his name in vain, right? It doesn't mean don't cuss. It means don't claim to be, a follower of Christ and then not walk the walk, right? So you just live your life and they'll see the hope that you have, right? What does Paul say? Be ready to give a reason for the hope that you have within you. That's it, man. It's super simple, man. And we had one at our house too. We invited a bunch of people over. talk conspiracies and eat and hang out and let our kids play together. And we had like, I don't know how many people were. There was probably 60 people. 30 of them were kids. It was nuts. But
awesome.
It was a good time of fellowship. And, we decided after that we're going to do a home Bible study, and all of them said they wanted to come. So, that's the kind of thing. It's like, they were like, a lot of people started off the conversation with, I'm not that good of a Christian. So, but you know what? It's like, I'm not here to put you on the scale somewhere, that's not what it's about at all. I don't even,
what's funny is the Sumerian woman at the well. You guys remember that story?
Mm-hmm.
It's the Sumerian woman, and Jesus comes up here, talks to her, proclaims that he is the one who will allow the Sumerian people to be able to worship again at the temple. And she runs back to the city immediately after and starts telling the people that she saw the Messiah. She didn't have like 6 years in seminary school. She literally proclaimed it to the whole town, So she went back to the people and she said, "Come see the man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" She didn't need to, she just had a 5-minute experience with the Messiah. And that was enough, I think, for a conversion for an entire city, So we got to keep remembering that, it's not about how much knowledge it's, it's the Holy Spirit inside of us. We just have to be obedient and give ourselves over and be humble, do what the Spirit asks.
Yep.
Yeah, indeed. Guys, I got to go.
Yeah, we
get up way too early.
Makes you feel any better. I got to be at work at 3:30 in the morning.
No, that doesn't
So
make me better.
when you get up to pee, if you could give me a wake up call. That'd be good.
All right. Yeah, I'll hold the phone up to my wailing infant.
Yeah, I got like a couple of those, man. I sleep with earplugs in and, a taser. Like,
God bless you.
Hey, we appreciate.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. You want to give out your information again, so where people can find you, where they can find your YouTube channel, where they can find your book. Go ahead and give everybody that information.
Sure. They can find me on YouTube under Watchman Alexander. I think the actual address is the Apocrymancer. It's what I started off with, but just search Watchman Alexander. It'll pull me up. My website is also watchmanalexander.com. Unfortunately, it's down right now. Somebody hacked it, but I'll try and get that back up soon. And my book is Leviathan's Ruse, and you can find that on Amazon, or go to leviathansruse.com and you can get the ebook version there in multiple formats.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. Ian, you got anything else you want to add?
No, man.
And they can find Alexander. They can find you on Facebook too, correct? You're still on.
I put your Facebook link in the description of this. So.
Okay, yeah, great. My newsletter is temporarily suspended right now, so most of the updates I do are coming through either Facebook or Twitter. So people should sign up there.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, we love you guys. Thanks for tuning in this week. Share this out. You guys are the resistance to the satanic takeover of our culture. And, we need your help to share this show. So put it on Facebook, share it out, and tune in next week. We'll see you. See you next week.
Love you guys. We'll see you.